going to continue the higher talks. We're going to go into higher talk number 10. As you see, all these higher talks that we started are slowly building up on top of each other. They seem disconnected. They seem like they are just topics of their own, and each topic is loaded with a whole bunch of others. But you start seeing how the way of thinking, the way of seeing the world, the way of understanding your reality is on a much higher realm through a much greater prism. You start seeing things differently. You start acknowledging that the life that you know as physical, the problems that you have encountered in your life, and the rewards and the victories and the triumphs and all the wins that you had, for some reason they play a much bigger picture. You start recognizing there's a thing called patterns. And that's where we're going to go into today. Patterns. Everything in this world is patterns. Let's break it down in as many ways as we can. Pattern number one. We have reincarnations. Okay, it's called Gilgulim, reincarnations. We go from one life to the next, and from that life to the next. That means our soul is in different bodies throughout time. If you want, the Radak speaks about it somewhere in Tehillim. I'm having trouble remembering right now exactly where, but if you pick up my Tehillim book, maybe you'll get some insight about it. Like in one of the poems, understanding which pasuk, how the Radak understands this, but he says that when Mashiach is going to come and we'll have Tchias HaMesim, will be the resurrection of the dead, we will all come back to life. Which body will this soul go into? Will this soul go into the first body? Will it go into all of them? Are there going to be like 10 yous, like 10 of you throughout history, and you'll be meeting each other? And what's it going to be like? He's going to get married, he's going to have a kid now, and you're going to have a kid. Are they going to be able to intermarry? So it can't be that. So because we run into too many questions and it doesn't make any sense. The Radak goes in this direction. He says that the first body that ever held this neshama, which this is called the Shorish neshama, the original body that had this. So of course Adam HaRishon had all the neshamas, but then the neshamas were broken down into pieces, and now they were given to humans. And those first humans, they should have, or they could have done all the work that is required of them. And since they didn't accomplish that, we broke down to even smaller pieces, and every one of those, and that original neshama, which is called you, was broken down into time, into different lifetimes. And we're all going to go back into that first person, into that one neshama, that one piece that we received as us, me and my person that I was before in the 1700s and the person that I was before in the 1200s. And we're all going to go back to the original top guy. And he is going to have the knowledge of all of them. He's going to have the knowledge of everyone all the way until me. And by you, everyone until you, he's going to have all the knowledge, all the stories, the same history, and they will be able to connect everything from the beginning of time to the end of time and start seeing how things make sense. Right now we deal with things in our life, and we could only start making sense of things afterwards. It's like, oh, I missed my flight. I was very upset, but then I heard that the flight crashed. I mean, everybody likes that example, but everybody hates it as well at the same time, because it's like we don't need that in order to see Hashem. We could start seeing our lessons just by going a little bit ahead in time, and then you look back and you're like, oh wow, now it makes sense. Whatever happened back then, I see how it was actually my good at the end. So when Mashiach is going to come, and the first guy is going to have all the knowledge of the beginning of time to the end of time, based on his lifetime, based on his life that he led, and his area, and his zone, the things that he liked, the people that he lived with, the things that he encountered, the wars that he died in, and the waters that he drowned in, all those things that he went throughout all those lives, with different names and different times and different rulers, and all of that stuff is going to be knowledge of one person. And it's going to be us. You're going to be walking around there as if you feel like, right now I think of myself as this entity, and I know that I am so and so. As much as you could identify with yourself and how well you know yourself, I know that I am this person, like who I am. It's me, it's my space. Like if somebody comes into you, you're like, stay out of this. What's this? This This is me. This is, I don't want you so close, right? That's the me that you know yourself. You're going to be that same person when after Tchias HaMesim, along with a whole bunch of others who have who lived with this same neshama source, this core of neshama. So you see the Gulgulim. This is the Radak's way of thinking of it, but the Gulgulim go in patterns. We have our first life, and because our first life we couldn't do certain things, we weren't capable of fighting those addictions, fighting those urges, or fighting the sadness, or we had a whole bunch of things that we could have done better, giving more charity, being more kind, all those things that we needed to do throughout our lifetimes. Those things trickle down in the next generations and say, okay, we'll give you another chance. This time, prove to me that you could do these 20 things. And we only succeed in 1 or 2 or 5. A good tzaddik, maybe 10. We go through a whole bunch. And we try to perfect ourselves in those areas, but then there are still areas that we could have used our strength and abilities to be better. And every generation, every lifetime that you come back down, you have these things that you always struggled with in the last couple of lives that you have to continue struggling with them in this life to make them even better. So the things that you have already accomplished and are done with, that becomes part of your personality. You're born as a person who is kind, who is happy, who's courageous and with a grinding mindset, and somebody who wants to succeed, somebody who wants to do good things. Why do you have this type of personality? Because the people before you have done a lot of work in those areas so that it becomes you. You have achieved, you have unlocked those levels. And then when you come down to the next life, it's because there are some things that you still haven't unlocked. And we're looking forward to unlock each one of those levels until our entire being, our entire neshama from top to the bottom is complete. When we say, wow, I am the strongest, best, top version that I could be. So if you see that the world works in patterns, that every lifetime what you're doing is basically continuing the struggle of last life into this life and hoping for a better outcome. And then you finally correct 2 or 3 things and you go down to the next life and you're still dealing with the leftovers and so on. You narrow it. Hopefully we don't widen it. Hopefully we don't kick ourselves out of different levels that we've reached in previous lifetimes. We don't want to be that, and that's why we have a Torah and we have to follow it. It's important that we follow it. It's important that we know that we have a way to live. All this that we're talking about, this is the nature of the world. If you understand how nature works and how things go from thing to thing and from life to life, which is proven, which is not just, you don't have to prove it in Hebrew Swarm. You could even look, there's a book called Many Lives, Many Masters by Dr. Brian Weiss. He's a Jewish doctor. I don't know how orthodox he is, but he's a hypnotherapist and does amazing work with past life regression, and they prove things existed and consciousness were back then. And if you see that the world works in patterns, you start connecting to the patterns that happen, not just throughout the big time of past life, this life, and next life. You start connecting to the patterns that are happening in your life as well. You start seeing in hindsight, as we said earlier, as we mentioned, that only after a certain amount of time do you look back and you're like, hey, I realize why certain things happen to me, and I'm realizing why I'm carrying this struggle. Why do I constantly need to deal with authority figures in my life? Why when I'm in middle school, and why when I'm in high school, and why when and the communities that I live in, and with the families that I build. Why do I have to deal with this same pattern over and over again? And you're like, hey, wait a second. This is probably the thing I have to deal with. This is probably the work I have to put into my life. So once you put this pattern together, you're like, okay, how could I better myself in this pattern? How can I make that next time I have authority figures coming into my life telling me what to do, that it won't just repeat itself to be another story in my pattern? How can I make that this pattern ends with me right now? How can I look back and say, I've seen this pattern, it's not good for me, I've been yelled at back then, and I blew up. I've been yelled at later on, and I blew up again, and so on and so forth. I don't want to do that anymore. I just want to live a normal life. Sorry, the ice cream truck just came here, and I'll have to pause. Sorry I paused over there. I know in the video it just seems like one long thing. The ice cream truck just showed up, and I couldn't continue thinking. It was carrying me away. But anyhow, we were talking about patterns, and how when we see things in our life, we say it ends over here. I've seen me blowing up so many times because of these authority figures, or I've seen myself fall because of this addiction or because of this habit. You start realizing, yes, you could blame your habit, you could blame certain people, you could blame technologies, you could blame whoever you want why you have a problem. But you have to admit to yourself that there is a weakness from your side that is not allowing you to stop the problem. As much as everybody is to blame for your problem, as much as the world didn't censor or filter or block things out of your innocent mind, and you were affected by that because you had people who didn't know how to teach, or they were just there for the money, or maybe just hated children. I don't know, maybe, hopefully not. But you had these people, and you have to learn how to see it as, why do I have a weakness in this? Yes, they have problems, but I have a problem with them. And we have to start seeing from the inside out, which means instead of being part of the story of the world, you get to observe it while you're there, right? You can imagine a whole bunk in camp, 25 kids, they're all walking. They're all walking around the counselor, and everybody wants to say something. Everybody wants to hear every word the counselor has to say. Everybody wants to say something, share their story. And then there's this one kid who's walking along with everybody else, but he's standing on the side. And people look at him and are like, oh, he's the sad kid in the class. He's just always, like, he's in his mind, right? We always had that one or two kids that, like, you would be like, if you're both not walking along, why not at least walk together, right? Let's be alone together type of idea. But you always have those people who are in their thoughts, and that's how we become now. We start observing life instead of being part of it and being part of the group of kids that are just pouncing on the counselor. We're this kid on the outside, and we're observing everybody else do it. We're observing the things that are happening to our life. Observing, starting to become observant, yeah, as observing life and seeing the patterns is tricky. Because once you go into this part of observing, you stop living in the present moment. You're not realizing time going by. Because the kids that are walking along with a counselor, for them, they are enjoying every moment. And as we keep on repeating, the point is not the destination. The idea is the journey, right? I don't like using this line, this sentence, because it's so overused. I feel like it just takes away what I'm trying to say. But the idea, the kids are in, like, between the counselor, and they're just living life at that moment. They're not thinking about time right now. They're just thinking about getting their word in. And it's only later that they're going to look at their clock and be like, wow, an hour went by. Because they didn't think about time. They didn't think about it. But someone who's observing is in a place called time. They're standing and observing what happens in time. But they are standing outside. They're standing with time, like behind the glass. They go into this top office where the officers of time hang out, and you just spend a lot of time there watching what happens in time while you're not doing anything. So yes, if you want to become a philosopher and you want to do this for life, you want to start writing how it feels like to be an observer, then great, you're observing being an observer. So now you being an observer ends up becoming you spending time properly, right? I understand, it's a lot of words. I'll say it again. When someone's learning Torah, when someone's in their Gemara, if they're learning it for themselves, shaloi lishma, what ends up happening, they are not actually spending time properly. They're in time, but they're not enjoying time. They're not the kid around the counselor. They are the kid on the outside who's seeing everything happen instead of being part of the actual thing. But when someone learns Torah Lishma, someone who really thinks about Hashem and wants to connect to Him and understand His mitzvahs and dig into the Chachma, such a person is making it his life. So he becomes the observer of the observer, because an observer is somebody who analyzes, someone who stands on the sides and learns lessons. So if you want to learn to read your patterns in your life, you have to become an observer. But you have to remember, being an observer is going to keep you in a place that's outside of time, unless you could make your observing your way of life, the way you spend time. And if that's the way you spend time, you will have a very rewarding life. You're going to create your life surrounding this type of thought, seeing what's happening around you, and noticing little things, making cheshbonos, making patterns, and seeing patterns and understanding how, analyzing how everything works. As you go through such a life, you become a different person. You start making decisions differently. You start seeing what do I have to do in order to live a better life? How am I going to change myself if I see that this has been the things that I've been dealing with? If you are such a thoughtful person who says, I want to correct my pattern, not just the pattern of me going through over here in this life that the authority is driving me crazy, but it seems like that this weakness, this problem that I'm dealing with is not just my problem in this life. It's been the problem in the past and going back all the way to the beginning, and I was never able to hone it. So now I have to figure it out. So you're going essentially when you are stopping to observe your life, you are going into a place where it's required of you to make changes. And those changes that you're going to make, and you're going to stop these patterns, they are here to help you stop going through that same vicious cycle over and over again. So now, here's where we go from a circle to a spiral. Because when you're in a vicious cycle, you're basically living one loop over and over and over again. It becomes very lonely, it becomes very hard to get out of, and the more you turn, the faster you spin, you go like you lose it. You lose the ability, or you feel like you lose the ability to ever leave that spiral, that circle. But then, at some point, we say, okay, we have to start going up. We have to open up this circle, and we have to start changing something. We have to make that if we're actually having energy of turning, we should turn upwards. We shouldn't just stay in one place forever. We have to continue going. So that means there's not just one pattern that we have to live with. There are tons of patterns that we go through in our life, which in the overall picture, yes, it describes the picture of the past, and that keeps on coming up, and that's why we have deja vu the entire time, because we've already been through things and like been through calculations of matter. Things have happened before us, and because things have happened, this deja vu is going to be seen in front of our eyes, even though it didn't happen with these people, even though it didn't happen in this place. But I've seen this exact sequence of actions or words somewhere else. It's called association. Yeah, we start associating things with things that we already know, and that's where deja vu comes in, because we associate certain stories with certain stories because of the similarities between them. And if you look into the Gemara is actually learned that way with Tzad HaShava. When you see two psukim not Tzad HaShava, Gzeir HaShava, when two psukim have the same words, it's like something of a callback, and we spoke about that before. So the world has patterns, and the same way as we have to deal with certain stories throughout our life in different times, we also had different people that we had to do it with. So it could be in 1,000 years ago, we lived with a certain person, a soulmate of ours, meaning that me and that person, that soulmate, is somebody that I will attract, or we will be attracted somehow. We will connect. We will instantly feel that there's a connection. We will get along. Those soulmates are born on the astrological signs, and sometimes they're born 20, 30, 50 years apart. But they need them, because now in this generation, in this lifetime, you need to have the granddaughter to learn it from the grandmother, even though last generation you were sisters or best friends. You just come back in different times, because this is how you're going to learn the lessons. Grandma is going to go through a hard life, and grandma is going to come to you and teach you what she learned, so you don't have to. And now, both of you, grandma and you, will both have ended up perfecting this this type of trait. And we see different people come down, and we just connect to them. And different times of our life, we connect to different people. It's like the kids in your classroom. After 20 years, you don't see them anymore. You see 3 of them. You make a class reunion. You can't believe how many of them gained weight, and how many of them are divorced, and how many lost everything, and how many made so much. And you're just looking around, and some of them you don't even remember. You're like, you were that kid, the quiet one on the side. Oh, you're a hedge fund guy now. You know, it becomes very interesting. But that's not the point. We meet people when we're younger, and then we meet a brand new set of people that we're around when we get older. Because based on the struggles that we go through when we're younger, we need those people. We need those people as kids in order for us to be able to perfect the certain things that we have in common. If you have to perfect kindness and I have to perfect kindness, why not let's do it as kids, so that way when we go to 20 we'll already be kind, so we could move on to the next thing that we have to deal with, the next pattern that we have to deal with, and then we'll meet new people whom we need. And that's why there are people that we keep around us, wives, and we have kids and friends, because we know them to be soulmates. We know them to be people that we have to work a lifetime to get to know. If a couple does not have fights, that means they're not working through stuff. And we don't have to say fights, but at least conversations. And that's when we learn about Gemara, the fights between the Chachamim, where they were not hands and feet. You never punched each other. It was I mean, actually, the Gemara says once he shechted somebody else, but it was more okay. That's the Gemara in Masechtas Megillah. But they didn't fight with their hands and fists. They would fight with words, and the fighting with words is just the argument of sheer heart. And like, this is what I feel, and this is what you feel. This is what I think, and this is what you think. And that's the dialogue of conversation. And so basically, when we start seeing how conversation works, conversation also works in patterns. We bring up things, we think of things that go through in our life, we think of them, and then they come back up again, and they come back up again, and until we take care of it. If you're somebody tells you, I need you to drop the baby off at the playgroup, yeah, and so you take the baby in the car, and you keep on. It's going to constantly, this thought that you need to drop the baby off to the playgroup is going to constantly be on your mind until you take care of it. It's going to keep on reminding you, and the more urgent you tell yourself it is, the more it will be there, and it's going to keep on repeating. And that repeating is also a gilgul. So that's alarms. Every alarm, every circle in time, everything that we set ourselves up for a distance is called a gilgul, because we reincarnate something that was into being. We took an old thought and we bring it back. We took a person, an old friend from a previous life, and we bring it back. We took an entire life and all their traits and all their struggles and repeated it again. When we see the patterns in life, we become better people because we start working on the patterns. We want to become better people. We start thinking this way, and it helps. Even if we don't think like this all day long, you just think you have this. You listen to this. You take it into your mind. You allow your mind to accept the words. And if you missed a couple lines, you feel like you like with a couple of minutes that you were spaced out. It's okay. Go back, listen to it again. Allow this thought to just form in your mind. If the words go up, they'll slowly start having an effect, even if you don't realize. They go in, and maybe one day we'll bring up exactly about psychedelics and how they work. But this is what a regular conversation does. Having a conversation that's deep, that's honest, that's true, that's looking for purpose, looking for meaning, is going, as long as you repeat those words and you hear people talking about it around you, you'll slowly become influenced, and your mind will start understanding things, becoming okay with things that were so far and so distant from you, and now they're just part of you, and you appreciate this kind of life. So anyhow, that's higher talk number 10. I apologize about the break in the middle. I know for you it doesn't even matter, but I appreciate it. So I'm going to be uploading this to Spotify as well, and to YouTube, and hopefully I'll be branching out onto more channels. Until then, I appreciate it. Thank you so much, and hope you're doing well. Alright, take care of yourself. Bye-bye.